Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in about 60 seconds. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Enora Moss, and I'm with the TBNA team. I'm doing community outreach for this project with my partner, Peyton Manning. And so we're excited to welcome you to our DC Powerline Undergrounding feeder. This is 15001, our civil construction virtual open house. And so we're going to go ahead and get started with a few housekeeping rules for this meeting. Again, this is our public meeting, and we are open and streaming on various platforms, and we are recording this meeting. So you can view this meeting within 7 days on our YouTube page. This meeting is being live streamed right now on DDOT's Facebook page, facebook.com/D.DC. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, then we definitely ask that you use our Q&A portion where you can type your information into the chat and coordinate and ask questions if you have any questions that are coming up. If you do need any technical support during this meeting, you can call 202-997-8354. All right, so I'm just making sure that you can navigate WebEx with the audio and video. Everyone is on mute. You cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you during our Q&A section and comment, question and answer section, comment period. And this just helps that the meeting runs smoothly. And so to request to speak, you will need to raise your hand, and we'll cover that feature shortly. All right, so you have three dots that are in the corner of your screen to the right-hand side. That's going to open up a new panel where you can ask and field your questions to all of the panelists, and you can click that box to type your question and press enter to send your message. If you are joining via your mobile phone, click the Q&A or the question mark icon to access the Q&A to ask questions at the end of our presentation or during the presentation as you see fit and have a question. If you are dialing in by phone, you can dial *3 to use the raise hand function. This indicates that the project team, that we know that you would like to speak and verbally ask your question. All right. So also just a quick reminder, if you do want to raise your hand, this once again indicates to the project team that you want to speak. You can click the participants icon on the bottom right of the WebEx window, and that's going to allow you to use the raise your hand icon. Alternatively, you may press Control-Shift-R if you're on your keyboard, and again, dial *3 to raise your hand and allow us to know that you want to speak if you're on a cell phone. And we're going to go to the next slide. All right, so today we're going to cover the introduction of the project. We'll review the introduction of our project team members that will be speaking to you today. We'll review the DC Plug video, the feeder, which are the project limits and the scope of work, the construction impacts. You'll get to know the outreach team, us a little bit better. And we have a few FAQs for you, and we'll have some contact information, and then we'll do our Q&A portion of the meeting. All right, so you are going to hear from Cesar Barreto. He's with the District Department of Transportation and a DC Plug civil engineer. We also have on the line Mark Ferrer. He is our Pepco project manager for this project. In addition, our construction team, our civil construction team for the feeder 15001, we have Hyatt Brown, that's our civil construction manager, and our civil contractor is Capital Paving. Without further ado, we're going to get started with this introduction to the DC Plug project and give a little bit more information about our project. Thank you so much.
The District of Columbia has experienced more violent storms in recent years. resulting in extensive power outages. For this reason, the district and Pepco are working to reduce power outages by moving many of the overhead power lines underground to improve the infrastructure and enhance resiliency. Neighborhoods affected by construction will be notified well in advance of the project start date. This will include the posting of no parking signs. Construction will begin with the coordination of streets and sidewalks impacted in your neighborhood. Signs will be posted, and flaggers will direct vehicles and pedestrians around construction crews. Before any digging begins, other existing utility lines that may be in the path of construction will be carefully identified and marked in the field. In some cases, small plants, trees, and grass will need to be removed from public spaces to allow for digging and placement of new underground equipment. But we will do our best to retain as much vegetation as possible. Any public property disturbed by this work will be restored to its original condition. Construction workers will use asphalt saws to cut the pavement. A backhoe will dig a trench for the placement of the distribution line. Periodically along the main primary line, manholes and tap holes will be required to house equipment and to provide access for inspections and repairs. The backhoe will also be utilized in these cases to excavate for these structures. In order to meet jurisdictional safety requirements, shoring will be provided in the trench to ensure stability. Pepco uses either fiberglass or plastic PVC conduit to protect underground power lines. Concrete will be poured into the trench to encase and secure the conduit, and steel plates will be placed over the trench temporarily to make the road usable to vehicle traffic. After the concrete is set, the steel plates will be removed and the trench will be repaved in sections. Transformers, switches, and other ancillary equipment will be set in place. Equipment such as transformers and switches will be installed either in the roadway or the sidewalk, depending on space availability. Underground cable will be installed. Landscaping will be restored as needed and roads paved. Overhead primary electric wires will be removed from poles, but secondary service and communication lines will remain. Finally, the new underground power lines will be energized. While electricity will remain on throughout the project, there will be a short scheduled outage needed to switch from the overhead lines to the new underground system. We appreciate your patience while the District and Pepco improve the future of electrical service for the District of Columbia residents.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Cesar Barreto. I am a civil engineer with the DC Plug project, and I'm going to take you through the description of the feeder 15001 civil construction work. And of course, the project limits. When we say the work civil construction, that means part of placing the electrical conduits and transformer enclosures in underground. No electricity overchange between what's the primary, what is hanging versus what is on the floor. Next page. Some of the project limits, and this is one of our biggest corridors on the feeders, 15001, is 8.4 miles. We are starting from the bottom. We got Colorado Avenue and Bladens Avenue, heading up towards the Carters and Georgia Avenue and 16th Street up all the way up to Kennedy Street. Our project limits are really massive on this one, and including 16th Street and 14th Street. And like I mentioned, it's 8.4 miles of work of electrical conduit work. Next page. This slide shows another image of our feeder 15001 with a much closer imagery of and highlighted imagery of the corridors that we're going to be working on. I would like to point out that there is a current project on Kennedy Street Northwest, which is the reconstruction of Kennedy Street project. They will be doing this project mentioned is going to be doing the work of electrical undergrounding at the same time that they're doing the work. Is what we call in DDOT an opportunity project. So that work will be done in coordination with us. One more time, as you can see, this is Crestwood and the 16th Street neighborhoods. Next slide. On this slide, we're going to show images on the type of work that we do based on our scope of work. In this specific case, we're going to talk about the conduit. The first initial step of the conduit work is to mark and saw cut with the asphalt, as you saw in the video. In the image, you can see the machine that we use for saw cutting purposes. After the saw cut, we come in with a trench. Basically, we come with a small excavator and do a trench where the conduit is going to be laid, which is our third picture, where you can see where the conduit is being properly placed on the floor on the excavated trench. At the fourth matter in the bottom left corner of our picture in the slides, we see the concrete encasement that we place some concrete on top of those conduits, and then we put the steel plates after we backfill it. The trench is backfilled once the concrete hardens, and that's when we put the plates so we can continue to allow parking or coordination of movement of travel vehicles. Once the trench is backfilled, then we proceed to do the final restoration, which is your image on the bottom right corner. Next slide. In similarity to the work of electrical conduit, we also have some structures that we place as part of this scope of work. For example, we do tap holes, transformer enclosures, and manholes. Those structures are sometimes delivered to the site on a truck, as you can see in image number 1 and number 2. The structures then are lifted and excavated and placed into the hole that we have already prepared, and then we make sure that the conduit arrives to the proper transformer enclosures, or those structures that we place, and then we backfill, and then we pour the concrete and make sure we have an opening, such as a manhole or a gate opening. And at the bottom right, you're going to see what it can be the finished product without the sod, where you can see just the entry gate and the sidewalk being restored. Next slide. Once again, this is more examples of the civil construction work when it comes to structures. We got transformer enclosures and manholes and covers for the switch boxes. This is currently happening in the road section, and one of the pictures is happening on the top right section. As you can see, it's almost the finished product, an example of the finished product on the bottom right. Next slide. I would like to point out that most of the work is, the goal for this construction impacts is to maintain accessibilities for both residents and business during the construction. We do place permitted construction hours from 7 to 7. When we do have primary or major arterials, what we call the main roads, we make sure to reduce those time frames of work to 9:30 to 3:30 p.m. Sometimes we do have night and weekend works, depending on the requests that come in from DDOT. When it comes to parking impact, you're going to see the emergency no parking signs being placed at a minimum 72 hours in advance notice. These hours restricted may vary upon activity of the roadway classification. In addition to the emergency no parking signs, we have a magnificent public outreach stream that will keep coordinating with ENCs and all the communities, and you're going to see door to doors. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Raisha, who's going to talk about more public outreach.
Thank you, Cesar. Hi, everyone. My name is Raisha Quarry. I'm with the DC Plug Communications team, and yeah, I'm going to talk about more public outreach. So we have a dedicated outreach team, and we want to keep a very open and honest stream of communication with you all. So we would like for you to go to our website if you want to see some of our updated traffic advisories. We work hard to get them up there regularly. Also, if you guys want to join our listservs to receive the updated schedules, traffic advisories, or anything that's going out, please do so. Just head to www.dcpluginfo.com and then head over to feeder 15001. And like it shows on the screen, you should be able to see click join the listserv. Just type your email in and we'll get you added to the listserv. Next slide. Like I said, we will have a dedicated outreach team. We have Peyton Manning and Honora Moss, who started us off this evening, sorry. And they'll be your outreach team in the field. They'll be the ones representing DC Plug at your community meetings, at your ANC meetings, things of that nature. So you'll get to know their names very well in the community. Also, we have a DC Plug 24-hour hotline available. So if you guys would like to contact at any time, 844-758-4146 if you have any questions or concerns about DC Plug, as well as our email. It's questions@dcpluginfo.com. Next slide, please. These are just a few frequently asked questions that we get a lot in community outreach, and everyone wants to know when construction is going to start. So you guys may see some pre-construction activities happening this month, later on this month, but actual civil construction where shovels are actually in the ground won't begin until April next month, 2024. And at that point, well, prior to that, you will get a 7-day notification. You guys have probably received door hangers to even attend this meeting, and you'll receive a 7-day notification of when construction will start. The construction is scheduled to be complete, well, civil construction is scheduled to be complete September 2026, and the electrical phase is scheduled to start directly after. If it takes longer, then we'll just come back out around and give you guys more outreach to let you know when it changes. Next slide. That's the last slide. And I'll pass it over to Peyton.
Thanks, Ray. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight's meeting. We're getting to the Q&A period, but just wanted to point out the Title VI survey. At the end of the meeting, everybody will be automatically redirected to take a quick survey. It only takes about 2 to 3 minutes. We really ask that you take the time to complete the survey. It helps a lot in scheduling our meetings going forward to kind of understand what works best for your community. And since we'll be out here for a while doing the construction, certainly any future meetings where we're planning, your input would be much appreciated. But with that, we can jump right into the Q&A. And I do just really quickly want to re-highlight some things before we get to the questions. The project website, dcpluginfo.com, you would go to the tab that says feeders and find feeder 15001, as Raisha mentioned. There you can find the most up-to-date traffic advisories when they're released, as well as sign up for the listserv so that when those traffic advisories are going out, they'll be automatically emailed to you as well. If you have any questions, you can email myself, Peyton, at Peyton, Peyton, at tbaconnects.com, or you can email the project, questions@dcpluginfo.com. And then, like Ray said, there is a phone number, 1-844-758-4146. That is a 24-hour hotline if you have any questions. But now I'll jump into the questions. I see a few coming in. As Enora had mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, please feel free to send your questions in either the Q&A or the chat. We'll grab them there in the order received. Or perhaps if you want to speak, you can raise your hand. And if you're calling in, you can raise your hand by pressing *3. But the first question that I saw come through, how can we find out the date when construction is likely to begin on our street? In this case, Blagden Avenue. Or in what order will DC/Pepco work on the streets? So as Ray said, we'll be out with we'll be issuing TAs. Those will go door to door, and we'll put out 7-day notice prior to any construction happening. That will be site-wide, so that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll have construction on your block. What you'll be relying on is the traffic advisories, and those will go door to door as well. But Caesar, I don't know if you have any more information in terms of anticipated start.
So we are looking at notice to proceed, and the baseline schedule is being finalized as we speak. We don't have a specific date for the street of Bladensburg or any other street right now because the contractor is the one that makes the decisions. We do have required for them to do a 4-week look ahead. So we do have a full schedule that will provide a amount of time for the residents to be aware when they're coming in. The best way to find this information, like you mentioned, is joining the listserv. And of course, our public outreach team will be communicating with the ANCs on the ANC meetings and with door-to-doors. And we'll provide information on the schedule and when we're heading to the streets. The last notice, the last sequence will be the emergency no parking signs that you will get 3 days in advance. That's the decision maker that we know that the street we're heading over to your street.
That's
Real quick, can you hear me, Peyton?
Hey, Ron. Yep.
Normally, in the past, we have posted a 3-week look-ahead schedule on the DC Plug info website. I think we're still doing that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's a great place for the residents to check and see which streets are coming up. Now, it's not fixed in stone and the schedule can change, but it gives you a pretty good idea as to how the construction will be proceeding. And as Caesar had mentioned, we don't control the means and methods of the contractor. So they will have several crews working in different areas because this feeder is such a large feeder, so they're not interacting with one another. But following that 3-week look ahead schedule, you'll have a very good idea as to when we're coming and when we'll be gone.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. And then also, just like Caesar said, the key giveaway will be once you see those no parking signs coming up in front of your house, 72 hours in advance, you'll know that construction is coming. Mark, I believe this next question is for you. Hi, thanks for holding this meeting. How is the electrical line fed to the house?
It's a good question. So electrical line is fed to the house. So just going back to the original video. So as you guys know, we are going to be undergrounding the primary lines, and we won't be touching the actual service lines. So the electrical lines will be fed to the house. Similar to how it is already, it's just that the primary portion of the actual lines are going to be underground. So you're still going to see the overhead poles that can provide service through that way, but the actual primary lines, the main lines, would be underground and connecting to the existing lines to be connected to people to our residents or customers' house.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. And Val, I believe your question about the schedule was answered, but can you give us a street-by-street schedule? I live on Blagden Avenue between Allison and 18th, interested in specific scheduling info. So like Ron and Caesar were saying, the 3-week look ahead can be found on the website once the construction activities are scheduled and ongoing. So please, I think that's going to be your best resource for that. And then Dean and Chris, thank you for the exciting presentation. Our power lines are in the alley on Emerson Street. Is that where the work will be done? Also, how will the houses be connected? So Mark, I know you just answered the second part, but in terms of the power lines in the alley.
Yeah, so the alley, so where was this location again in the alley?
On Emerson Street.
On the street. I can't speak to the exact location off the top of my head. I do assume that it's going to be, if we are going to underground that portion of the feeder, there will be work in the alley. But again, the homes are going to be fed the way they're being fed now. It's just that the actual primary line itself is going to be put underground. There's a possibility that all the areas will not be fully undergrounded. It's just picking the worst performing feeders and the worst performing areas to make sure that that those are the most protected in the event of a storm, just to improve resiliency. So to answer your question again, if we are going to be undergrounding work around there, you should expect to have work done in the alley. Well, like I said again, the houses are going to be fed the same way that they're currently being fed.
Thank you so much, Mark. And then Mark, I think I'm still with you. Once complete, what wires and poles will remain on the street? Will this impact front yards?
So I would say again, off the top of my head, I can't speak to the exact poles, but the process is that, you know, the poles are gonna be remaining. Some may be removed or replaced. But the idea is that the poles are gonna be remaining for the job, for the work done here. Once the primary lines are going to be removed and put on the ground, the poles will be cut and capped, pretty much only including the secondary lines and the service lines going to the customers' houses will be overhead, and the rest of it will be on the ground. It shouldn't affect any, I guess, front yards. If they do replace poles, the poles are gonna be right next to the actual existing pole. And then the work that's gonna be done once the pole is replaced is that they would transfer the communications line, if there are any, from the old pole to the existing pole. But you should not anticipate any, you know, you may anticipate to see an old pole in front of a front yard, but any old poles will be removed. That is part of the program as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then a question, will the DC Plug project be including Kennedy Street between 13th and 14th?
This is Caesar. As mentioned previously, this part of the work is done on the reconstruction of Kennedy Street project, which is currently ongoing. It's what we call an opportunity project. We took advantage that the work is currently ongoing, and we asked for that project team to put the electrical conduit underground.
Great. And then Caesar, a question regarding parking restrictions. So no parking tickets for residents during construction?
We would like for the residents to follow the rules. If they see emergency no parking signs for the specific time frame mentioned, please move your vehicle from that location until further notice, because we don't want you to get a ticket. That's part of the coordination and the efforts that we do for the contractor as part of DDOT. And please, yes, yes, if you're parked on construction site during the work time frames mentioned on the emergency no parking signs, yes, you will be ticketed.
Thank you.
Or worse, you might be towed.
That is correct.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, so the contractors typically, they need to keep work going, so they will tow if needed to get the car out of there to clear the site. So please follow those signs. They'll be posted 72 hours in advance. And then existing parking restrictions are still in effect as well. Elizabeth, I see you said, can you please email around the slides? Certainly, I can email. If you could email me, Peyton, Peyton @tbaconnects.com. I can shoot you the slides, or we'll post them to the project website. So either way, you could find them. But I don't want to send them to everybody because everybody may not want to be part of the listserv yet. But please, again, sign up for the listserv. You do want to get those types of documents. So many streets within Crestwood are already undergoing work to replace lead pipes. Is scheduling being coordinated with DC Water?
That is correct. All work that is performed is coordinated with all utility agencies to make sure that we're not there at the same time, or if we're there in similar matter is after kind of like they finish and we start, and then we just do full restoration jointly.
Perfect. And then there's another question. Are the new conduits covering all the houses at the end of the dead end of Colorado Avenue? I'm at 4235 Colorado Ave.
Unfortunately, I do not recall. I was trying to look into the plans when I saw that, but I do not recall. I apologize.
Okay. Federico, if you can send me an email, I can follow up. Again, my email is Peyton, Peyton @tbaconnects.com. CONNECTS.com.
I think there's a misconception. What we're doing, undergrounding these primary lines and putting them in conduits and then encasing it in a duct bank. These primary lines, the residents really have no impact with, and that's not going to be direct connection. Essentially, what you will see at the end of the day is what is there right now, the communication lines and the service lines to the individual residents. So from that perspective, you're not going to notice anything. What we're doing is we're taking the primary lines, which can have an effect on 1,000 or more customers, and undergrounding them to protect them so that if there is a failure, it will only impact a few residents. And so in the video, that may not have been highlighted, but I'm not sure if it's on the website or not now, but we used to give a presentation that showed when you have, before the plug program comes, you have a tree come down or some other issue on the primary, it knocks out the entire neighborhood. And after we've finished and completed, when you have a tree or something come down, it only affects a small number of houses. And so that is the main purpose of this program, is to try to make the system as reliable and resilient as possible, and also being cost effective. And so that's why we're focused on the primary lines.
Thank you, Ron. Very well said. Les stated that 3 weeks isn't enough time if we're planning a major event. Once the contractor determines their plan, is there a way to at least find out the rough order of construction on the various streets?
The 3-week look ahead schedule is probably your best way to see, unless you're able to, and again, the contractor changes, but he has a overall schedule that's in Primavera, and it would be a very complicated thing if you're not familiar with Primavera, or to see it in a PDF type document, because there are literally thousands of activities. And yeah, and this project actually covers like 2.5 years, so it's spread out. You have to look at the smaller version to see what's coming. That's my best answer on that ask.
Thank you, Ron. And Les, again, if you are planning a major event, if you could reach out to me, certainly, the contractors can do their best to work with you and try to be out of the way. At the dead end of Colorado Ave, will the new conduits be installed on the streets or up on the front yards? There are no sidewalks built up.
All of this work is being done in what's called public space. Public space is a part of the road, the curb, and if there's no sidewalks, there's the potential what we call public parking. And usually there's a certain distance set back to where your property line is. And we will be working within what I call public space. It's not private property, and it may be in the grassy area. Again, it depends on your lot and what the actual right-of-way line is for the public space.
Thank you, Ron. And then will details be provided on site about whether the work requires digging into yards? We don't have sidewalks on our street. Yes, if you're impacted by transformer enclosure, you should have been met with already, and certainly will be out again to notify you of any work that's happening. But like Ron was saying, all work is in the public space. Who will be responsible for the new connection between the new conduits and the private electrical inlet connection? Mark, that may be back to you during the electrical phase.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure, yeah. So it says, who will be responsible for the new connection between the new conduits and the private electrical inlet?
So the conduit itself and the electrical wire, is that what the question is specifying?
Yeah, I think from the new undergrounded portion to the private line that's going in, or secondary line that's going in.
Yeah, so Pepco's team will be coordinating the interconnection between the power lines. Once the civil portion is done, so once all the conduit is completed, the job essentially is turned over to Pepco, and they begin the installation work of all the electrical lines, which will then be installed and then connected to the secondary lines.
Thank you, Mark. And then I have another question from Commissioner Rubio. Parking, when it comes to working on a block, may you consider providing additional signage when leaving a trench open? Also, given that we have limited parking while the construction, or will the construction team consider posting no parking signs only in the area of work versus to blocking off the entire block?
I don't think we're going to leave any trenches open. We will have them plated at the end of the day. And usually, I'm not guaranteeing, but usually you're able to park after the construction people have gone home. But again, there'll be the time in the morning that you'll have to have your car moved before the construction starts. So there will be a jockeying of cars, unfortunately, but we won't have open trenches. They'll be plated.
And again, there's a question about Kennedy Street in the map. Will the DC plug project include Kennedy Street between 13th and 14th? The map shows a gap in front of our house at 1309 Kennedy Street.
As Caesar had mentioned, the Kennedy Street is a part of the DDOT's Kennedy Street reconstruction project. So all of the DC plug infrastructure will be installed during that reconstruction project. And later, after that's complete, Pepco will come back and run the cables and put in the various electrical infrastructure to support their operation.
Thank you, Ron. And Caesar, have this question is regarding existing no parking signs now. Has the contractor been putting out no parking signs? Are they starting?
No, that's gotta be somebody else doing the work, either DC Water or the Kennedy Street.
Hold on one second. That is a possibility that that's being done for test pits for where
Yes.
the conduit and duct bank of 15001 will terminate, and the Oregon Avenue reconstruction project will pick up. And what we're doing there is we're trying to make sure that the location that these structures will be located is possible to install them, because we can't always see what's under the ground. And sometimes there may be pipes and other buried utilities. And so we're just trying to make sure that when we bring our duct bank to that location, the Oregon Avenue team will be able to place the structure at that location.
Yep, that is correct. It can be all of the above. It can be either another project in the location or just a quick test bits from our analyst engineering team doing analysis on the road.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron. And Ron, Kennedy Street. I know Oregon Avenue is a second opportunity.
Oh, if I said that, I meant Kennedy. Yeah.
I know. Just for the record, Kennedy Street, but a similar project over on Oregon. Elizabeth, I'm sorry. I see that you've had your hand raised for quite some time. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so that you can speak if you still want to. Let's see, we should be able to hear you now, Elizabeth.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Great. So I'm on the 1300 block of Longfellow between, Longfellow between 13th and Colorado. And I don't see us covered. I see the surrounding blocks covered on the map. I don't see us covered. And I'm wondering why the 1300 block of Longfellow isn't included in it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So Mark, Mark or Caesar, that may be a better question for you.
Yeah. Okay. I can answer a little bit, and Caesar can step in. And Caesar, you can also add chime in on this too. But there may be a policy. So typically, when we elect these feeders to be undergrounded, not every portion of the actual feeder or along the feeder will necessarily be undergrounded. It is just dependent on one, the constructability of design and other factors that come into play. I don't know, Caesar, if you had anything else you want to add to that.
Sorry, I had network connection issues and I lost you for 30 seconds and I just received my network connection. Can somebody repeat the question specifically? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, so the question was on Longfellow Street, in the 1300 block of Longfellow Street, in the map, there's a gap, and just trying to understand if they're reaping the benefits of the project, or why it was left out.
It's usually not the decision. It's usually a design issue. We're not trying to leave anybody out. It's just what I like to call forces of nature, but it's just it all depends on the magnitude of the work and if it's a primary conduit. Usually the type of work that consists on the work that we have currently is the difference. Don't recall specifically any specific reason why it was left out, but usually it's based on the scope of work and the type of conduit and the type of work that we do.
Okay, just a heads up, someone on my block asked last time and then someone said, oh, actually, no, the 1300 block is included, but then it's not showing up on the map. So I don't know if there's some confusion or if it's really not included, but it is a densely populated street with lots of big trees. So just flagging that there's at least some confusion in the last meeting about it.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And again, I think you already emailed me. I think I saw it pop up on my phone, but
Yep, thank you.
yeah, I can follow up with you after the meeting as well.
Great.
Thank you. The next question, in the maps we've seen of the proposed conduits, it appears the conduits are mostly in the street, but occasionally the manhole, transformer enclosures, or tap holes are located on the public easement in front of our homes, which is part of our front yard. It's hard to tell from the publicly distributed maps if our home will have one of these on our easement or in the street. Is there a way to see a more detailed map or find out if our easement will be dug up? To that less, I would say, please just shoot me an email. Again, Peyton, Peyton @tbaconnects.com. If you send me your address, I can look into it and let you know.
Peyton, didn't we canvass all the people that actually had either tap holes or transformer enclosures?
Yeah, we did. So during the design phase, individuals that were going to be impacted were notified. If you have not been notified, you should not see anything in front of your home, but we can double check it. So if you want to shoot me an email, please shoot me an email and I'll double check for you. But good catch, Ron. Yeah.
And possibly they moved in. They weren't here when the design was going on because this has taken several years.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll be back out again as well, notifying anybody with transformer enclosures or tap holes or structures in front of their home or adjacent to their home. So you'll be notified, but certainly if you want me to do some digging now, just shoot me an email and I can look into it. And then I have another question. Several new taller poles have recently been installed alongside older telephone poles on Blagden Avenue. The older poles were not removed. Will this work result in either the older or newer poles being removed?
I have a follow-up questions to that because sometimes those poles are not electrical. They might be for other telecommunications or other type of utility devices. Not sure if it belongs to Pepco. Mark, do you have anything to add on this?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the original question?
Yeah. So several new taller poles have recently been installed alongside older telephone poles on Blagden Avenue. The older poles were not removed. Will this work result in either the older or newer poles being removed?
Yes, so that is a possibility. We have seen, as we do our actual sidewalks and as construction continues, that we do see these old poles that do end up being removed. I'm not sure. I can't speak that all of them be removed, but I think the idea is to remove any poles that are not in use. So just to bring it back, if there are old poles that need to be removed, they will be removed throughout the project lifecycle.
Thank you, Mark. And then Mark, this is probably another good question for you. Is this an opportunity to increase amps to individual homes? Should homeowners be thinking about that?
That's a good question. Right now, the program is just meant to be a resilience to make everyone's distribution of power more resilient. I would say that there is work going on where people do increase the size of the amps while this goes on. That's not uncommon. I know we have worked with Pepco's new business team where they are upgrading their dwellings during this project. So it happens. I would say that is a good question. I would say if you are planning to, increase your amps, then you can just go ahead and do that. But I guess just thinking about too, if we are increasing the resiliency of this of distribution, it could be a good idea to, or it could be a good opportunity to increase the amperage of your houses. But that's a good question. Don't have the exact answer, but I think it wouldn't hurt.
Thank
Why
you.
don't you follow up on that?
Yeah, I can follow up on that for sure.
So Heather, if you can send me an email, we can follow up. Again, my email is Peyton, Peyton, at tbaconnects.com. Hi team, thank you for hosting this meeting. I live on the 1300 block of Hamilton, directly across from the Hamilton Recreation Park. At any point during this process, will any roads need to be rebuilt or fully resurfaced? If so, which blocks? I ask because my block is in disrepair and is sinking in the front of our house. After several requests and 6 years of emailing, there has been no resolve. Wondering if our streets will be rebuilt slash resurfaced during this process.
That's really not a part of this project. We're essentially a utility project, and we'll be putting a small trench, maybe 3 or 4 feet wide, and we will resurface the lane in which we're working. But we have no intention of resurfacing or rebuilding the roads. That would be for a future project with DDOT on a reconstruction project, or for our asset management to assess the condition of the road and to make repairs.
Thank you, Ron. And then Ron, there's a follow-up for one of your previous statements. Thanks, Ron. What does the first 3-week schedule look like?
We have not received that yet, so I can't answer that question. But if you send us an email, Peyton will follow up.
I will. And then like we've said before, please track the feeder website, dcpluginfo.com. That'll be the quickest way to get any updates on the project or sign up for the listserv. Will work be conducted on weekends?
Yes, that's a possibility. Also on holidays is another possibility.
The request will come in from the contractor, and then if DDOT approves, then they will continue the work. It all depends on the type of work as well and the timeframes.
And whether the contractor is behind on his schedule.
Perfect. And then what are the factors that determine whether the work will be done in the roads versus the public right of way in people's yards?
No work will be done in people's yards. All work will be done in public space.
Okay, then there are electric poles in my alley. Are you going to do those as well? I'm on the 5200 block of 14th Street. So Mark, I believe you had kind of touched on work on the alley before. I don't know if you had anything to add here.
Yeah, it would be dependent on what the design is calling for, or if any adjustments need to be made during the construction process. But it is possible to have work done now, yes.
Okay. And then Urso, I just sent my email in the chat as well. Like I said, my email is Peyton, Peyton at tbaconnects.com. You can also email the project directly at questions, as you see on your screen, questions at dcpluginfo.com. Will this project affect the light at the intersection of Blagden Avenue and 16th Street? We noticed a new light, but it's not yet operational.
We are actually coordinating with the work that was performed. We asked that work was performed from the traffic engineers and safety signals division. We are coordinating with that type of work. We do not touch that intersection. Those signalized, they're going to be activated when the time comes. And we will coordinate with them to ensure that we don't impact what they did.
Thank you, Caesar. And then, hi, I joined late. Sorry if this was already discussed. When does the project begin and how long is work expected to last?
All right, the project right now, we're estimating we will give notice to proceed on April 1st of this year. The project is, I want to say, it's over 600 days. I can't remember the actual date, but it's like 2.5 years. Is that right, Caesar?
That is correct, sir.
Yep. Okay, and just double checking. I believe that's all the questions we have at the moment. Again, if anybody wants to speak, they can raise their hands or type their questions in the chat. I'll give it another minute to make sure nobody has anything else. Again, please sign up for the listserv, or if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, Peyton at tbaconnects.com, and I'll be sure to get any information and get back to you. I've seen a few of you sending emails already, so I appreciate that. And I will get back to you by the afternoon tomorrow. Here's one more question. When we see areas marked for undergrounding, is that all out in front on the street, or could it be in those houses, alleys?
I would say the majority is going to be in the street, but I can't say right now without actually, and I just don't remember looking at the plans, whether we impact an alley or not. It's possible that the lines, the electric lines and communication lines that are in the alley are really part of the secondary service and not part of the primaries, because we're only undergrounding primary service. It might not be affected if it's secondary. If there's a primary that runs there, it might be affected. We'll have to see the specific thing. If you can send an email with the exact alley location or approximate location, we can try to get back to you.
Thank you, Ron and Urso. It's Peyton, Peyton at tbaconnects.com. And again, I'll give it another 30 seconds to see if any more questions come through. But I did want to thank everybody for joining this evening's meeting. And again, I want to stress, please reach out. If you have any questions, reach out to me, Peyton at tbaconnects.com, or you can reach out to Enora, Enora, ENORA at tbaconnects.com, or you can also reach out to the project email, questions at dcpluginfo.com. And I do have another question coming. Will poles be removed promptly after lines are buried? I live at 1618 Decatur, and the abandoned double pole in front of my house has stood for years. The top of the abandoned pole has been cut off a few months ago, but the pole remains. This needs attention. So one thing that I can say is the poles will remain. I don't know the double pole situation. It sounds like they were converting to a new pole. But what you see will remain. There are still secondary lines on those, as well as communication lines on the poles. It's just the top 4 lines and the transformers are coming underground for the sake of better resiliency. I don't know if anybody wants to clarify anything that I just said or add to it, but Joe, I hope that kind of answers your question. Mark, is there anybody that you know he can reach out to take a look at the double pole situation and maybe get one removed?
Yeah, if you can, if you can just send the information over to, I guess, Peyton to send to me, we can take a look at it. Like you said, the poles that are going to be with the secondary lines are going to be kept, but like we are anticipating to remove poles that need to be removed. There is a process with this. Before a pole can be removed, we also need to have communication wires transferred to the new pole as well if new poles are being installed. So there is going to be a process, but we are working to make sure that gets done as soon as possible for the poles that will be removed. Again, like Peyton said, the poles that are going to be used for secondary lines will remain, but there will be poles that will be removed throughout the program or throughout the project as well.
Would it be helpful if he sent you the pole number or the double
Yeah.
pole numbers
Yep.
to identify where those poles are?
Yeah, that would be helpful if they can just like take a picture of the actual IDs on the poles and also provide the address as well. We can look into, those poles that may or may not need to be removed.
Thank you. And Joe, if you don't mind shooting me an email, obviously I know you provided your address now, so we can do some looking, but so we can communicate with you. If you could email me, and maybe send a picture of the polls, we can shoot that around through the correct people at Pepco. Thank you, Joe. And I'm not seeing any more questions coming through at the moment. Again, I just want to thank you all for joining. Please follow the project website. Please reach out with any questions or concerns throughout the construction. And again, thank you for joining this evening's meeting. That will do it.